Good morning, beloved souls. It's the 30th day of November, and the breath of a new dawn calls your name. Before the noise of the world rushes in, before your phone lights up with the world's worries, there is this still moment, a sacred pause, a whisper from heaven saying, "Rise and remember who you are." Faith is not a wish. It is not the soft sigh of maybe. Faith is the fire that dances in the dark. It is the quiet strength that says, "I may not see the way, but I know the way will open." Today, as you stand at the edge of November's ending, let your heart be the altar, your hope the offering, and your faith the flame that never dies. Because this morning, child of light, you are not begging for blessings, you are aligning with them. You are not chasing miracles, you are one. So breathe deep, lift your face to the sun that never fails to rise, and say within yourself, "I am ready, I am steady, I am filled with faith." Faith is rising even when the world bows low. You see, my child, there are mornings when even the sun hesitates, when the clouds hang thick and heavy, and the heart feels like a tired traveler carrying too much on its back. But even then, especially then, faith rises. It does not ask permission. It does not wait for the weather to clear. It stretches, slow and sure, out of the soil of our struggle and says, "Here I am. I'm still alive." There are days when you feel the weight of the world pressing your shoulders down, when your knees grow weak, when your dreams look smaller than your doubts, and yet deep in that quiet ache something whispers, something ancient, something holy, that you were not made to live bowed by fear. You were made to stand tall in the light of grace. Faith does not belong to the mighty or the unbroken. Faith belongs to the ones who tremble but rise anyway. The world will bow low, yes it will. It will bow low to greed, to noise, to shadows that promise power but deliver emptiness. The world bows to what shines only on the surface. But faith rises from the root. It is the song that hums beneath the noise, the pulse that beats beneath despair. It says, "Even if I fall 7 times, I will rise 8. Because faith, my dear, is not about winning. It's about willing, the will to rise again. There will come a time when life will test you, when the ground beneath you shifts, when friends you trusted turn away, when your heart feels like it's breaking beneath the weight of unanswered prayers. But that's when faith takes your hand. It doesn't lift you in a single sweep. It lifts you in whispers, in small, quiet choices, in the way you still make your bed when sorrow says stay down, in the way you still smile at a stranger when your heart is heavy, in the way you whisper, "Thank you," even when you don't see the blessing yet. Faith rising is not a grand explosion of power. It's a soft awakening of courage. It's the steady heartbeat that says, "I will not be defined by what has fallen, but by what still stands." You see, when the world bows low, it bows to fear. But fear cannot stand in the same room as faith. Faith lifts your chin. Faith says, "Look again." Faith says, "The stone may be heavy, but the tomb is empty." Oh, I have seen people walk through fires and come out shining, not because they were untouched, but because they refused to let the flames define them. That is faith. It's the unseen strength that grows when everything else is stripped away. Faith teaches you that you can lose almost everything and still have something unbreakable left inside you. And when you rise, don't rise with arrogance, rise with grace. Rise knowing that you too have bowed low before, and that humility is the soil where true faith grows. Rise not to tower above others, but to lift them beside you. Because faith that rises alone becomes pride, but faith that rises together becomes power. Every morning that you wake, every time you breathe deep after a night of tears, you are witnessing faith in motion. The same breath that fills your lungs is the proof that heaven still believes in you. So stand up straight. Let your shoulders drop the weight of yesterday. Straighten your back like a prayer. Lift your face to the promise of today and walk forward, not because you have no fear, but because you've learned that faith is stronger than fear. And when you bow your head to pray, remember, Faith is not about asking the mountain to move. It's about believing that you can climb it. It's not about avoiding the storm. It's about learning to sing in the rain. The world may bow to comfort, to doubt, to what it can see and count and hold. But you, child of light, were made to rise beyond that. So when the world bows low, when the noise gets loud, when the road gets rough, when the weight feels too heavy, remember that your rising is not defiance. It is divine remembrance. It is your soul standing in agreement with heaven, saying, I still believe. Rise not just for yourself, but for every dream that thought it was forgotten. Rise for every heart that once said, I can't. Rise for every person watching, waiting to see if hope is still alive, because when you rise, you remind the world that faith never bows for long. Stand taller than your fears. Bend only to pray. Faith is rising even when the world bows low. When the night stretches too long and the air feels thick with worry, faith still stirs. It doesn't ask for permission to breathe. It doesn't wait for applause or clear skies. It rises quiet as dawn, steady as heartbeat. You may not see it at first. It doesn't always come wrapped in light. Sometimes it arrives in a whisper, sometimes in a single trembling step forward when everything in you wants to stop. That is faith. It is the small flame that refuses to die when the wind grows cruel. There are mornings when you wake, and the world feels too heavy to lift. The clock ticks, but time stands still in your spirit. You've prayed the same prayer so long it feels worn, threadbare. The answers haven't come, the road hasn't cleared. You wonder if heaven has gone silent. But hear me now, faith is not built in the noise of certainty. Faith is carved in the quiet. It is born in the long nights when all you have is a whisper and a will. It is in those hollow spaces that faith grows strong enough to rise, even when everything around you bows low. The world bows to fear every day. It bows to doubt, to greed, to the shallow promise of what shines but does not last. The world bends under the weight of its own disbelief. But you, my dear, are not of that world. You were shaped by a power that breathed galaxies into being. You were built with the same strength that holds the stars in their place. So don't you dare bow to fear. Stand. Even if your knees shake, stand. Even if your voice cracks, speak life. Stand, because your faith was not meant to be buried under the rubble of worry. It was meant to rise through it. You may have been knocked down. You may have lost things that broke your heart wide open. You may have been misunderstood, underestimated, left behind. But faith is what takes your brokenness and weaves it into a banner of strength. Faith says, I will not let this be my ending. It picks up the pieces and says, watch what beauty can be built from ashes. I've seen it too many times to doubt it. I've seen women who buried their dreams stand up and start again. I've seen men who lost everything find courage in the sound of their own heartbeat. I've seen old hands trembling in prayer hold more power than an army of the proud. That's what happens when faith rises. It takes what was meant to crush you and makes it the very thing that carries you forward. Faith doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It moves quietly like roots beneath the earth, growing even in darkness. When you are bowed by life, when you feel pressed beneath the weight of sorrow, faith is already reaching for the light. It's already pushing through the soil, already believing in the sun before the sun appears. It doesn't need proof. It is the proof. Some days you'll feel like you can't lift your head. That's all right. Even bowed, you're still in motion. Even tears can water your courage. Don't despise the low places because they teach you how to rise. Every valley holds the strength for your next climb. Every low bow before life's hardship shapes a deeper kind of grace. Faith doesn't keep you from falling. It teaches you how to rise differently. It teaches you how to carry peace in your bones even when storms rage. It tells you, you can bend, but you won't break. You see, that's the secret. Faith isn't about standing tall all the time. It's about knowing that when you fall, there is something divine in you that always gets back up. When faith rises, it doesn't just lift you, it lifts everything around you. The people who see your strength, the ones who thought hope was gone, they catch your light. Your rising becomes their reminder. That's how faith moves through the world. Quiet, contagious, unstoppable. It doesn't march with pride, it glides with grace. So when the world bows low, when the headlines scream chaos, when hearts grow tired, when kindness feels like a lost art, let your faith rise a little higher. Let it be seen in your patience, in your gentleness, in your refusal to give up. Let your presence be a prayer that says, I believe in the morning, even when the night is long. And remember this, faith doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like survival. Sometimes it looks like breathing through tears. Sometimes it's just getting up one more time than you fall. But every time you rise, you testify that light still wins. So stand, my friend. Stand taller than your fears. Let your heart be your compass, your hope be your weapon, your prayer be your power. The world may bow low, but faith will always rise. Faith walks where sight grows dim. It does not wait for the light to turn on, nor does it tremble when shadows fall across the path. It moves with quiet dignity through uncertainty, trusting that even in the dark, something greater is guiding the way. You see, sight is the gift of the eyes, but faith is the vision of the soul. Sight will show you what is. Faith will reveal what can be. There are moments when the road ahead disappears, when the next step feels like it's suspended over emptiness, and fear whispers, stop here, don't go further. But faith leans in. Faith says, I can't see the bridge yet, but I know it will appear beneath my feet. That is the difference between the one who waits for proof and the one who walks with trust. The walker of faith doesn't deny the dark. They just refuse to let it decide where they stop. We are so accustomed to wanting to see the whole picture, aren't we? We want the map before the journey, the answer before the question, the victory before the battle. But the Spirit doesn't grow that way. Faith isn't forged in the knowing. It's formed in the not knowing. It's in the space between questions and answers that our souls learn how to listen, how to trust, how to keep moving when logic says stand still. There will be seasons when your sight will fail you. You will look around and see no progress, no open doors, no sign that your prayers have been heard. Everything in you will ache for evidence, for something to hold. But faith will whisper, keep walking. It will ask you to take one more step into what seems invisible, and that step, just that one, becomes the miracle. Because faith doesn't promise that the road will be clear, it promises that the road will hold you. There's a beauty in that kind of blindness. It teaches surrender. It asks you to trade control for connection. To walk not by what you can calculate, but by what you can feel deep within, the pull of something sacred, something steady. When you move like that, your steps stop being ordinary. They become prayers in motion. I have known people who lost everything, family, home, direction, and still found the courage to get up, brush off the dust, and walk into the unknown. They had no map, they had no certainty, but they had faith. And faith, even the size of a mustard seed, can move the impossible. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg, it simply believes. It believes that even in the dark, the divine is working. Even when it can't see the path is being prepared. You may not always feel that belief burning bright. Sometimes it flickers, faint as candlelight in a storm. That's all right. Faith isn't about how loud your conviction sounds. It's about how steady your spirit stands. You don't have to roar. You only need to whisper, I still trust you. Because that whisper carries enough power to part your night in two. When sight grows dim, the senses change. The heart starts to see. The spirit starts to hear. In that darkness, you learn the sound of your own courage. You learn the rhythm of grace beneath uncertainty. You discover that not all darkness is punishment. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes the divine dims the lights not to punish you, but to strengthen your other senses, to teach you how to walk by faith, not by sight. And when you look back later, you'll realize something. Every step you took, blind and trembling, was guided. Every delay was direction. Every no was a redirection towards something higher. You'll see that while you were walking in what looked like nothing, you were being led toward everything. Faith doesn't need to see the ending to know it will be beautiful. It doesn't wait for doors to open. It learns to build windows of hope where walls once stood. It doesn't flee from the night. It becomes the star that shines through it. When you walk by faith, you stop demanding explanations and start embracing expectation. You begin to live in that sacred space between question and revelation, knowing that both belong to the same divine hand. And there will come a moment, maybe when you least expect it, when the darkness will begin to thin. You'll see the first glimmer of dawn. The path that once felt uncertain will stretch before you, clear and golden. And you will realize that every unseen step, every blind turn, every trembling moment brought you here. Stronger, wiser, anchored in trust. Faith walks where sight grows dim because faith knows something sight does not, that the light has never left. It only hides long enough for you to remember that you carry some of it inside you. So, when your way feels uncertain, and your eyes can't find what's next, don't stop. Keep walking. Keep trusting, because faith will always find its way home. Keep walking, even when you can't see. ChatGPT said, faith speaks before proof arrives. It does not wait for the evidence to appear, nor does it tremble in the silence of uncertainty. Faith opens its mouth when the world is still doubting, and it declares, "It is done." That is the language of the Spirit, the language that calls things into being long before they are visible to the eye. You see, faith doesn't echo reality, it shapes it. It doesn't respond to what it sees, it responds to what it knows deep within, the truth that cannot be shaken, even when everything around it trembles. There are people who wait to believe until they can touch the promise, until the door opens, until the miracle shows up wrapped in something they can measure. But faith doesn't work on human timelines. Faith begins speaking in the void. It looks at emptiness and says, "There is abundance here." It looks at sickness and says, "Healing has already begun." It looks at broken dreams and whispers, "This story isn't finished yet." That's what makes faith such a powerful force. It dares to speak life into what still looks lifeless. I've seen hearts speak in faith when all logic said to stay silent. I've seen mothers pray over their children with tears streaming down their faces, not because the situation looked good, but because they refused to believe it would end in despair. I've seen dreamers speak their visions aloud while standing in rooms that mocked their ambition. And somehow, over time, what they spoke began to rise. Because words, when they are soaked in faith, do not disappear. They take root in the unseen. They go out into the air and begin shaping the very ground we stand on. Faith speaks because it knows the power of the tongue. It knows that life and death are not just outcomes. They are spoken choices. So when the world says you can't, faith says, "Watch me." When fear whispers, "This is the end," faith answers, "This is the beginning." When doubt demands proof, faith says, "I am the proof." That's not arrogance, that's alignment. Alignment with a higher truth that sees beyond the moment, beyond the struggle, beyond the evidence. Faith speaks before proof arrives because it understands that waiting for proof is waiting too late. If you wait to see it before you say it, you're not moving in faith, you're moving in sight. And sight, my friend, is limited by distance and by fear. But faith, it stretches across the unknown. It claims joy while tears are still falling. It declares victory while the battle still rages. It builds altars of gratitude before the blessing has even landed. That is how the Spirit operates. It doesn't just hope, it proclaims. Sometimes you'll feel foolish doing it. You'll speak healing when your body still hurts. You'll speak peace when your heart is still restless. You'll speak light when your life feels dim. But let me tell you, the foolishness of faith is stronger than the wisdom of doubt. Because while the doubters are waiting for proof, the believers are building their tomorrow with words of trust. Faith doesn't pretend the pain isn't real. It simply refuses to give the pain the final word. When you speak in faith, you shift the atmosphere. You remind the universe that your hope is still alive. You tell your spirit, we are moving forward. And even when your voice shakes, even when your heart is heavy, even when everything inside you whispers, what if? Faith says, even so. It's that even so that moves mountains. It's that even so that calls light into being. The greatest miracles often begin with a simple declaration. It is well. I will rise. I am enough. This will turn for good. These are not empty phrases. They are spiritual seeds. Every time you speak them, you are planting hope in the soil of heaven, and faith is the rain that waters them. You may not see the sprout immediately, but the roots are growing in the unseen. The proof will come later. But first, you must speak. There will always be voices that tell you to be realistic, to wait until you know for sure. But faith was never meant to be realistic. It was meant to be radical. It is a rebellion against despair, a declaration of possibility in a world that worships proof. So speak your dream, even when no one believes it yet. Speak love into places that have only known pain. Speak hope into hearts that have forgotten how to hope. And as you do, you'll find that the world begins to shift quietly but powerfully around your words, because faith is not just what you believe, it is what you speak when belief is tested. It's what you choose to say when silence feels safer. It's the courage to proclaim, I am whole, even while you're still healing. That kind of speech is holy. It doesn't beg. It commands. It doesn't react. It creates. So when you find yourself standing in the middle of doubt, when proof is nowhere in sight and the night feels too long, open your mouth and let faith speak. Let it speak for the dream that still beats inside you. Let it speak for the promise that has not yet come to pass. Let it speak for the God who has never stopped listening. Because when faith speaks before proof arrives, proof always follows. Speak even before you see. Faith is the song you hum in your storm. It's not the anthem of victory after the clouds have cleared. No, it's the soft melody you carry when the thunder is still rolling, when the rain won't let up, when lightning flashes and you can't tell where the sky ends and the sea begins. That's when faith sings the loudest, not because it ignores the storm, but because it knows the storm doesn't last forever. Faith hums through trembling lips, through tired bones, through tears that haven't yet dried. It hums because silence would be surrender, and faith was never meant to surrender. There are storms that come to test the edges of your strength. They don't knock politely, they break through doors, scatter your peace, and demand that you prove what you say you believe. And in those moments, it's easy to forget the rhythm of joy. It's easy to let fear become the only sound you hear. But faith remembers the tune. Even when the wind howls, even when your voice is barely a whisper, faith finds the melody again. It hums it under its breath, over and over, until courage wakes up from its slumber. You've been there, haven't you? When everything you built starts to shake, when the people you thought would stay begin to drift away, when life takes what you thought you couldn't live without. You sit in the wreckage, listening to the sound of your own heartbeat, and somewhere deep down, a small sound rises. A hum, a sigh, a wordless song that says, I'm still here. That's faith. That's not denial. That's not pretending. That's the soul remembering the music it was made from. Faith sings differently in the storm. It doesn't sing in perfect pitch. Sometimes it cracks, sometimes it falters, sometimes it's just a hum between sobs. But even that broken sound carries power, because it's born from truth. It's the voice that says, I refuse to let this storm steal my song. You see, the enemy of faith isn't the storm. It's the silence that follows despair. It's when we stop singing, when we stop believing that the sun will rise again, that we lose our way. But as long as your song remains, even a single note, there's hope. I've met people whose lives have been storms from beginning to end, and yet they still hum. They still smile through cracked lips. They still dance with tears on their cheeks. They still whisper, "Thank you," in the middle of chaos. That's a kind of strength that no storm can drown. Because faith doesn't wait for peace to sing, faith sings peace into being. It's not the applause after survival, it's the rhythm that carries you through survival. When you hum through the storm, you are telling the universe, you cannot break me. You are telling your fear, you may shake me, but you cannot silence me. You are telling your God, I still trust you. And those three words, I still trust you, are a song in themselves. They rise through the noise like light through cracks. They steady your heart when your hands are trembling. They keep you afloat when the waters rise too high. And oh, there is something sacred in the sound of faith when it sings in darkness. The angels lean close when a weary soul hums through pain, because that sound, fragile as it may be, is the very echo of creation, the same faith that spoke worlds into being, now speaking comfort into your storm. When you hum that song, you join the rhythm of eternity. You become part of something unbreakable, unstoppable, divine. Some people think faith means the storm will end quickly, but no, faith means that even if it rages longer than expected, your spirit won't bow. It means you can stand soaked and shaking and still find beauty in the sound of the rain. It means you can be both broken and brave, both weeping and worshiping. That's the paradox of faith. It holds joy and sorrow in the same hand and still finds a song to sing. So hum, even if it's faint. Hum, even if no one else can hear it. Let your faith be the song that fills the hollow spaces of fear. Let it remind you that you have survived before, and you will survive again. Because the storm is not your end. It's the stage where your song becomes stronger. It's the place where your melody learns to rise above the noise. There will come a moment when the rain will stop, when the clouds will part, and you will realize that your song never left you. It carried you through every wave, every gust, every night that felt endless. And when the sun finally breaks through, you'll find yourself still humming, not because the storm is gone, but because you've learned that faith was the music that kept you alive. Keep humming your song. Faith does not ask when, it declares now. It doesn't wait for the perfect timing, or for the stars to line up neatly in the sky. Faith lives in the present moment, breathing life into what is yet to be. It stands tall in the middle of waiting and says, the blessing is already here. You see, faith doesn't live in the future, it creates the future. It doesn't beg time to move faster, it commands the moment to open its arms. There's a power in now that the fearful heart often overlooks. Most people are always reaching forward. One day I'll be strong, one day I'll have peace, one day I'll feel whole. But faith says no, not one day, today. Because the seed of tomorrow's miracle is planted in today's soil. If you do not believe in this moment, you will spend your life chasing the next one. Faith teaches us to claim the promise before it fully unfolds, to call ourselves healed while we're still hurting, to say I am free while the chains are still clinking around our feet. Faith does not measure by clocks or calendars. It doesn't bow to deadlines or delays. It understands that the divine moves in eternity, not in hours. So when faith speaks, it speaks with authority. It says, now is the time. Now is the time to forgive. Now is the time to rise. Now is the time to dream again. There's no guarantee that tomorrow will look any brighter if you don't open your eyes today. And faith, my dear, is the act of opening your eyes right where you stand and seeing the unseen. I've known people who prayed and waited for a sign, waited for a voice from heaven, waited for life to get easier before they dared to move. And in all that waiting, the years slipped through their fingers like sand. But I've also known people who dared to act in the dark, who said, "I can't see it yet, but I'll start walking anyway." And before long, the path began to glow beneath their feet. That is the difference between waiting for faith and walking in faith. Faith doesn't sit at the door hoping it will open. It turns the handle and steps inside. There's a kind of holiness in claiming your now, because every moment holds a spark of the eternal. The air you breathe is a reminder that you are still connected to something greater than yourself. Faith knows that. It knows that the moment you declare now, heaven starts moving. Because heaven doesn't respond to hesitation, it responds to conviction. When you speak with faith, the universe listens. When you stand firm in your now, you become a co-creator of what will be. Too many people treat faith like a bus they're waiting to catch. They stand at the corner of their lives saying, "When the time is right, I'll go." But faith is not the bus, it's your feet, it's your step forward. It's the movement that turns hope into history. Every great miracle began with a moment when someone stopped waiting and started walking. You don't need to see the destination, you just need to believe that the journey has already begun. Faith does not say, "When everything falls into place, I'll be grateful." Faith says, "Everything is already working for me, and I'm grateful right now." Gratitude in the middle of the unknown, that's the secret. Because gratitude turns waiting into worship. And worship opens doors no key can. When you choose to be thankful before the outcome, you declare that your trust is bigger than your timeline. The impatient heart always asks, when? When will it happen? When will things change? When will the pain end? But faith leans in and answers, it's happening, right now. Even when you can't see it, even when nothing seems different, the divine is already at work. The roots of your miracle are growing in the dark. Every tear, every prayer, every step forward is watering them. You just have to keep believing that what you've asked for is already moving toward you. There's something freeing about living in that awareness. It makes you lighter. It allows you to stop chasing and start receiving. Because faith doesn't chase what's meant for it. It attracts it. When you live with that kind of certainty, time loses its power over you. You stop worrying about when, and start celebrating what is. And suddenly, what was once waiting becomes happening. Faith does not ask when, because faith already knows. It knows that every second you live is sacred. It knows that you are standing in a divine timeline where everything arrives right on time. So stop waiting for the perfect hour. Stop saying, "I'll begin when I'm ready." You are ready now. This is the moment that matters. The present is holy ground, and faith is the voice that declares now. Say it with your spirit. Now. Faith builds bridges over doubt. It doesn't deny the river that runs between where you are and where you're going. It doesn't pretend the current isn't strong or that the waters aren't deep. No, faith simply looks at the distance, looks at the doubt and says, "I can cross this." It gathers the stones of belief, the planks of trust, the ropes of courage, and it builds something sturdy enough to carry a trembling soul to the other side. That's what faith does. It makes a way where reason says there isn't one. Every heart has known that river. The one that separates desire from fulfillment, prayer from answer, dream from reality. It's that space of uncertainty where hope and fear wrestle for control. You stand on the shore, watching the waves of doubt rise, and part of you wants to turn back to say, "It's too wide." But faith won't let you. Faith takes your hand and whispers, "Start building." It doesn't wait for the tide to lower or for the wind to still. It begins the work right there in the chaos, using whatever it can find. Doubt is a natural visitor. It comes to test the strength of what you believe. It asks questions that make you shake. It shows you obstacles that make your knees weak. But faith is not threatened by doubt. It uses it as material. Every plank in that bridge is carved from a piece of uncertainty that you've chosen to transform into trust. Every nail is a choice. Every rope is a prayer. You see, faith is not the absence of doubt. It's the decision to keep building despite it. There will be moments when the river roars louder, when the bridge you're building seems too fragile to hold. The storms will come to test your progress. The wind will whisper, "You're foolish to believe this will stand." But that's when faith digs deeper. That's when it reminds you of the times you thought you wouldn't make it, yet somehow you did. Faith remembers your victories, not your fears. It recalls that every time you walk through something impossible, something inside you grew stronger. I've known people who faced impossible crossings, broken homes, empty bank accounts, failing health, lost direction. Yet somehow they found the strength to keep moving. They didn't wait for the storm to calm before they began to build. They built right through the thunder, right through the tears. And when they reached the other side, they didn't just find safety, they found transformation. Because faith doesn't only carry you across, it changes who you are while you're recrossing. Sometimes you'll find yourself halfway across that bridge. The beginning is behind you, but the end still feels far away. The planks beneath your feet creak. The river looks higher, and you'll wonder if you've made a mistake. That's when faith leans close and says, "Don't look down. Keep your eyes on the horizon, because if you focus on the water, you'll forget how far you've come." The middle is always the hardest place, the place where doubt is loudest, but it's also the place where faith grows its wings. It's where you learn to trust what you've built, and more than that, to trust who you're becoming. Doubt will always be near. It will whisper its what-ifs and its not-yets. But you don't have to silence it to move forward. Just don't let it take the lead. Let faith walk ahead steady and sure, and let doubt follow behind as a reminder of how far belief can carry you. You don't conquer doubt by fighting it. You conquer it by walking through it. Every step across that bridge is an act of defiance against fear. Every breath that says, "I will not stop here," strengthens the structure beneath you. And when you finally reach the other side, when your feet touch the solid ground of answered prayer, you'll look back and realize the bridge was never just built by you. The divine was there the whole time, steadying your hand, guiding your steps, holding the ropes when your strength began to fail. You'll see that faith wasn't only your courage, it was your companion. It was the invisible builder that turned your doubt into something beautiful and lasting. And then something remarkable happens. You look back across that bridge, and you realize others are standing where you once stood, staring at their own rivers of doubt. And your bridge becomes their inspiration. Your faith becomes their invitation. They see what you built and whisper to themselves, "If they made it across, maybe I can too." That is how faith multiplies. It doesn't keep its victories to itself. It becomes a pathway for others. So when the river rises and the storm begins to howl, don't curse the water. Don't fear the distance. Start building. One plank at a time, one prayer at a time, one breath at a time. Because the same power that carried you this far will carry you the rest of the way. And when you stand on the other side, you'll know faith not only built the bridge, it built you. Keep building. Faith wears humility as its crown. It doesn't walk with loud footsteps or speak with proud lips. It doesn't need to announce itself, because true faith doesn't demand attention. It commands peace. It is quiet strength, not showy confidence. Faith bows before it rises. It kneels before it conquers. It knows that power without humility is just noise, but power with humility is grace. There are people who believe faith must roar, must shout, must make a spectacle to be seen. But real faith doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't measure its worth by how many notice. It doesn't shout its belief into the sky hoping to be heard. It simply lives it. Faith walks softly because it knows who walks beside it. It doesn't need to boast about its strength. It knows its strength was never its own to begin with. Faith understands that everything we have, everything we become, is not a trophy but a trust. When blessings arrive, faith doesn't puff its chest, it bows its head. It whispers, "Thank you." Because faith remembers the nights of hunger, the seasons of waiting, the hours when prayers went unanswered. It remembers the silence before the song. So when the harvest comes, faith doesn't say, "Look what I did." It says, "Look what grace has done through me." Humility is the soil where faith grows. Without it, faith becomes pride in disguise. You see, pride is loud. It wants to be seen, it wants to be right, it wants to win. But humility listens. Humility waits. Humility says, "I don't have to understand everything to trust." That's where faith finds its home, not in knowing, but in surrendering. It's easy to have faith when everything is clear, when the path is lit, but when the way is foggy, when the answers don't come, when all you can do is bow your head and whisper, "I still believe," that's when faith shows its true crown. I've met people with quiet faith, the kind that doesn't need to preach to be powerful. You see it in their eyes, in their calm, in the way they forgive without being asked, in the way they give without being thanked. They don't call themselves faithful, they just live it. And somehow their stillness speaks louder than any sermon. That's humility, wearing faith like a second skin. It's not something they perform, it's who they've become. There's a sweetness in humble faith. It doesn't rush, it doesn't grasp, it doesn't compete. It knows that what's meant for you won't miss you. It trusts that divine timing is better than human timing. It doesn't try to outpace grace. It walks in step with it. That kind of faith has nothing to prove because it has already proven everything by surviving. When faith wears humility, it can't be shaken by praise or by criticism, because both roll off a heart anchored in something higher. When people applaud, humble faith says, "All glory to God." When people doubt, humble faith says, "Still I will trust." It doesn't rise and fall on the opinions of others. It moves by truth, not by trend. It stays rooted even when storms come, because humility keeps it grounded. Humility also protects faith from becoming self-centered. It reminds us that faith is not only for our own deliverance, but for the healing of others too. A humble spirit knows that every blessing carries a responsibility. When your cup overflows, it's not so you can drown in abundance, it's so you can pour into someone else's empty hands. Faith that forgets humility forgets compassion, and faith without compassion is no faith at all. There will be times when your faith is tested not by pain but by praise. When success comes knocking and blessings multiply, that's when humility must rise even higher. Because sometimes the greatest trial isn't the valley, it's the mountaintop. In the valley, you need faith to survive. On the mountaintop, you need humility to stay grounded. And faith, in its purest form, knows how to do both. It can shout hallelujah on its knees. True faith understands that being humble doesn't mean being weak. It means being wise enough to know that strength without grace is just arrogance dressed up in confidence. Faith bows, not because it's small, but because it recognizes something greater than itself. That bowing, that surrender is not defeat, it is reverence. It is acknowledgement that we are vessels, not the source. And so, faith keeps its crown low. It doesn't glitter in the sun, it gleams quietly in the soul. It wears humility because humility never falls out of fashion with heaven. It's the kind of beauty that never fades, the kind of power that never corrupts. It's what keeps faith pure, strong, and steady no matter what the world does. So when your blessings start to overflow, when your prayers start turning into praise, don't stand too tall. Bend low. Whisper gratitude. Remember who carried you when you couldn't walk, who lifted you when you fell, who believed in you when you doubted yourself. Let humility be the crown that keeps your faith shining from the inside out. Bow before you rise. Faith turns every ending into a beginning. It does not see the world as a place of finality. It does not count losses as permanent or failures as forever. No, faith has a way of looking at what seems like the last page of a story and seeing the first line of a new chapter. It doesn't despair when doors close. It listens for the whisper of another opening. It doesn't mourn forever for what has passed. It remembers that every sunset carries the promise of dawn. There are moments in life when endings feel heavy, when goodbyes echo in the heart long after the words have been spoken, when doors slam shut and you feel stranded, as if the path you were walking on has disappeared. And in those moments, the human spirit wants to stop, to stay, to retreat into the grief of what has been lost. But faith does not linger in the shadow of endings. It takes the hand of sorrow and gently turns it forward. It says, do not cry over what has ended. Look ahead. Your journey continues. Faith knows that endings are never final. They are transitions, pauses in the rhythm of life meant to teach, to shape, to prepare. Every ending carries within it the seed of a beginning, waiting to be nurtured by belief and courage. When a chapter closes, it is not because life is done with you. It is because life is preparing you for something greater. Faith whispers that the door you see shutting is only one of many. There are paths yet unseen, opportunities yet unknown, miracles yet unfolding. I have seen people face devastating losses, loved ones gone, dreams shattered, careers ended, health failed, and yet, with faith, they found themselves standing at the threshold of a new life. They discovered gifts they never knew they had. They met people who would change them forever. They stepped into opportunities that had been hidden behind the curtain of their grief. That is the power of faith. It transforms endings into beginnings, not by pretending that pain does not exist, but by recognizing that pain is only part of a larger story. Endings teach patience. They teach trust. They teach the quiet, steady strength that comes from knowing that even when we cannot see the next step is there. Faith does not panic when the road seems to end. It knows the divine is at work, weaving a tapestry in which every thread, bright or dark, has its place. What seems like an ending today may be the very moment that shapes you into the person you were meant to become. There are times when you will feel that everything has ended for you. You will look at your life and wonder if the door has closed forever. But faith challenges that thinking. It says, your story is not over. The plot is still unfolding. The chapters ahead are richer, deeper, and more powerful than anything you have left behind. Faith has the courage to stand in the wreckage of what was and see the blueprint of what can be. Sometimes beginnings are disguised as hardships. Sometimes what appears as an ending is the only way forward. Faith teaches you to walk into the unknown with hope, to trust that the loss of one thing is the preparation for the gain of another. It reminds you that no pain is wasted, no tear is ignored, no night is permanent. Every ending carries the potential of a fresh start, a new song, a new vision, a new life waiting to be embraced. Faith also gives you the eyes to see opportunity in endings. It allows you to look at what has closed with gratitude, not bitterness. It teaches you to say, thank you for the lesson. Thank you for the journey, thank you for the love, and even for the loss. And when you stand in gratitude, you stand ready to receive the beginning that is already forming, even if you cannot yet see it clearly. Endings are not punishments. They are not walls meant to trap you. They are thresholds, invitations to step into something new, to evolve, to grow. Faith lifts the veil of despair and reveals the hidden promise. It reminds you that you are never too late, never too tired, never too broken to start again. Every day, every moment, every breath is a chance to begin. And when one door closes, another opens, sometimes in ways more magnificent than you ever imagined. Faith turns endings into beginnings because it trusts the unseen hand that guides your life. It sees the continuity where the human eye sees only separation. It understands that life is a circle, a spiral, a story that never truly ends but flows and flows, carrying you toward new horizons, new joys, new victories. Faith is the courage to let go of what was, the wisdom to embrace what is, and the hope to step boldly into what will be. So when life closes a chapter, do not despair. Lift your eyes, lift your heart, and step forward. Because faith will always lead you from the end to the beginning. Step forward. Faith transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. It is the quiet alchemy that turns the mundane moments of our lives into miracles waiting to be recognized. Faith does not wait for grandeur or spectacle. It works in the kitchen, in the fields, in the soft spaces between one breath and the next. It sees potential where others see routine, and it whispers to the heart, "This moment holds more than you know." Faith is not about waiting for life to change. It is about learning to see life as already blessed, already sacred, already full of unseen possibilities. There are days when life feels like a series of small, unremarkable moments. The alarm clock rings, the coffee brews, the workday drags on, and you wonder if any of it matters at all. But faith teaches us to look deeper, to see that even the ordinary is alive with meaning. The smile of a child, the kindness of a stranger, the quiet moments of reflection, these are the brushes of the divine in our daily canvas. Faith trains the eyes to notice, the ears to listen, and the heart to feel. It turns what seems routine into revelation. I have seen people who live with faith as their lens. They walk through life noticing the small wonders, the way sunlight catches on a window, the sound of rain on a roof, the warmth of bread fresh from the oven. To the casual observer, these are simple occurrences. To the person walking in faith, they are reminders of grace, markers of beauty, invitations to gratitude. Faith is the magnifying glass that enlarges the subtle miracles hiding in plain sight. Faith transforms ordinary actions into acts of love. Washing dishes, folding laundry, answering a call of duty, these become sacred because faith infuses intention into them. When you wash a dish with a prayer, when you sweep a floor with hope in your heart, when you serve someone without expectation, you are practicing the extraordinary. You are turning the ordinary into offerings and the simple into significant. Faith teaches us that the measure of life is not in the grand gestures alone, but in the devotion we bring to each small act. The world often teaches us to overlook the ordinary. It tells us that only what is large, visible, or applauded has value. Faith defies that. Faith says that the unseen matters more than the seen, that the quiet persistence of love matters more than loud declarations, that the steady rhythm of goodness matters more than fleeting fame. The ordinary is the soil in which the extraordinary grows. The moments we think insignificant are the very moments that shape our character, prepare our hearts, and cultivate our resilience. Faith also transforms ordinary suffering. When pain enters, when loss arrives, when life seems to crumble, faith whispers, "Even this has purpose." The mundane struggles, the quiet heartbreaks, the daily disappointments, faith can turn them into lessons, into growth, into wisdom. It does not remove the sorrow, but it redeems it. It shows us that even in the common trials of life, something sacred is being forged inside us, something eternal is being shaped, something precious is being prepared. Every day, full of opportunities for faith to work its magic. The handshake you offer, the words of encouragement you give, the moments of patience you practice, all of these, though seemingly small, are infused with potential to change lives. Faith transforms not by force, but by quiet insistence. It elevates the ordinary by insisting that love, attention, and intention are never wasted, even in the smallest gestures. The humblest acts, done in faith, become extraordinary footprints on the landscape of time. I have witnessed faith at work in moments so simple it seems almost invisible. A neighbor caring for another without expectation, a teacher giving extra attention to a struggling student, a friend listening when no one else does. These are the miracles faith creates daily. They are small, but they ripple outward in ways no one can measure. Faith reminds us that the extraordinary is not always loud or flashy. It is often quiet, persistent, and humble, waiting to be recognized by those who see with hearts wide open. Faith transforms ordinary moments into legacy. The choices we make, the patience we exercise, the love we extend in routine ways, these shape lives, inspire generations, and build futures. Faith whispers that no act of goodness is wasted, no gesture of love is too small, and no moment of integrity is insignificant. Ordinary becomes extraordinary when it is touched by intention, guided by hope, and lived in trust. So, look at the moments you think are ordinary today and see them through the eyes of faith. They are not just minutes or chores or tasks, they are sacred threads, waiting for your intention to weave them into something remarkable. Faith turns your everyday life into a symphony of grace, a mosaic of miracles, a living testament to the power of seeing beyond what is visible. Live today as though every ordinary act has the potential to become extraordinary. But faith shines brightest in darkness. It does not rely on the sun to illuminate the path. It does not wait for clear skies or calm seas. No, faith finds its light where all else seems dim. It glows quietly, steadily, even when the world is shrouded in shadow. It is the lamp in the night, the spark that refuses to be extinguished, the warmth that keeps hope alive when the cold wind of despair blows. Faith does not merely endure the darkness, it transforms it into a place where courage can grow, where vision can awaken, where the soul can see clearly what the eyes cannot. There are moments in life when darkness surrounds us. Loss, heartbreak, failure, fear, they descend like a thick fog, and it seems impossible to find your way. The night may feel endless and every step forward uncertain. Yet it is in these moments when the world seems at its most shadowed that faith shines brightest. It does not ask, "Why me?" It does not complain. It simply lights a small corner, and in that corner you can see enough to move, enough to breathe, enough to hope. Faith does not pretend that darkness is not real. It does not claim there is no pain, no struggle, no sorrow. Rather, it meets the darkness with the quiet certainty that there is a light within that cannot be touched by shadow. It is a flame that flickers but never dies, a presence that guides without pushing, a force that lifts without hands. When you walk with faith through the darkest valleys, you realize that light is not something outside of you. It is something you carry within. I have seen people endure nights that seemed endless, and yet their faith was a beacon. A mother mourning a child, a worker facing unemployment, a heart shattered by betrayal. They all carried a quiet glow. You could see it in their eyes, in their steadiness, in the way they rose again each morning. Their faith was not loud, it did not announce itself. But it was visible to those who knew where to look. That is the paradox of faith. It shines brightest not in easy times, but in the moments when all else fails. Darkness has a way of testing every fiber of our being. It challenges our courage, our patience, our trust. It questions every step we take and every prayer we whisper. But faith is not diminished by these trials. In fact, it is strengthened. Just as a diamond forms under pressure, faith grows more luminous in the darkness. Each trial becomes a polishing stone, each tear a lamp that reflects the light more brilliantly. Faith teaches us that night is not the enemy. It is the stage where our inner light can shine most powerfully. There will be times when fear threatens to overwhelm you, when doubt surrounds your heart, when despair whispers that the light has gone out forever. But even then, faith glimmers. It whispers, "Keep moving." It reminds you that every shadow has an edge, every night has a dawn, every difficulty carries the seeds of triumph. When everything around you seems black, faith allows you to see the smallest glimmer of possibility and take the next step. And that step, small as it may be, is enough to keep the journey alive. Faith also shines brightest in darkness, because it reveals what truly matters. It strips away distraction, pretense, and pride, leaving only the essential trust, love, perseverance, hope. In the absence of light, we recognize what is genuine, what is lasting, what is worth carrying forward. Faith turns darkness into clarity. It shows us the strength we did not know we had, the resilience that was hidden, the courage lying dormant. When the world dims, faith brightens, not outwardly for show, but inwardly, illuminating the soul. And when you walk through darkness with faith, you become a light for others. The glow of your trust, your courage, your steadfastness can guide someone who cannot see the path ahead. Your faith becomes a beacon, not just for yourself, but for those lost in shadows. One small spark can light another, and soon a network of lights appears where before there was only night. That is the power of faith. It shines not only to lead yourself, but to illuminate the world around you. Faith does not wait for the sun to rise. It shines regardless. It does not depend on circumstances to be favorable. It depends on the heart to be steadfast. It teaches us that light is not given. It is created. It is nurtured by trust, fed by hope, strengthened by perseverance. And in the darkest hours, when it seems there is nothing left, faith reminds us that the smallest light is enough to guide the way, enough to warm the heart, enough to transform night into a place where miracles begin. So when darkness comes, and it will, do not despair. Do not wait for the storm to pass. Shine where you are. Carry the light in your heart. Trust that it is enough, because faith shines brightest when all else is dim. Shine. And so, my friends, let us walk forward with faith, not only in the victories we see, but in the unseen, not only in the light, but in the shadows, not only for ourselves, but for those whose hearts need our courage. Let our faith rise when the world bows low. Let it speak before proof arrives. Let it hum through the storms, and let it shine brightest in darkness. For in this faith we find strength, purpose, and the unshakable truth that no matter the trials, no matter the endings, we are never alone. And every moment holds the promise of a new beginning. Stand tall, step forward. Keep the flame of faith burning, and let it light the way for others.